Welcome back. This time we're talking about Central Intelligence, the new spy comedy starring Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart. Now going in, this just seemed like a movie that had everything going for it. You had two great leads, and you had a director in Rawson Marshall Thurber, who's given us some really good comedies in the past, including Dodgeball and We're the Millers. And the result is a pretty funny movie. I did laugh quite a bit while watching it, but I never quite had that moment where I just broke down in laughter like I would in some really great comedies. Now I will say, Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart have great chemistry and are pretty much the best things about this movie. You can tell that they had a lot of fun while making it, and you get some more hints of that in some of the outtakes they play over the end credits. The story is 20 years ago, this guy named Calvin Joyner, played by Kevin Hart, was the cool kid in high school. He was a letterman, he was head of the drama club, voted most likely to succeed, just the kid of high school. And then you had this other kid named Robbie Weirdick, played by a very CG fat version of Dwayne Johnson, was the kid that was mercilessly picked on in high school. Flash forward 20 years, and Calvin is now an accountant. He married his high school sweetheart, lives in a nice house, but really doesn't feel that he ever lived up to the expectations of where he was going to go when he was a successful high school student. And then one day, out of the blue, he's contacted by this guy named Bob Stone, who he ultimately finds out is Robbie Weirdick. 20 years later, only now he goes by the name Bob Stone, and he now looks like Dwayne Johnson. Without giving away too much of the plot, Bob Stone is a CIA agent. He's investigating this particular case and needs someone with the accounting skills that Calvin has. So of course, mild-mannered Calvin gets dragged along into this CIA caper that with lots of action and funny moments. And like the leads and like the director, the premise for this movie seems like has a lot of comedy potential. And it's here where I would argue that the execution falters the most, because the writers essentially take this pretty interesting premise of these two guys that barely knew each other in high school, and they kind of swap roles, sort of a 22 Jump Street type of situation, and then gives us a very generic, predictable spy movie. Basically, every twist and turn as this story unfolds, you can see a half an hour ahead. There's really no suspense. You pretty much can figure out, once you know what the situation is, you pretty much know how it's going to play out. I would compare it to Spy, which for me is probably the best Melissa McCarthy movie I've ever seen. And that's because not only was that movie really, really funny, it actually had a good spy movie amongst the laughs. So even when you weren't laughing, there was this really actually interesting spy movie going on that just happened to be really, really funny. Here we get two really funny actors playing interesting characters for the most part, trapped in a very generic spy movie. And the result is, again, a pretty funny movie, but not one that just had me laughing hysterically at any moment during its nearly 2-hour run. Kevin Hart pretty much plays the same sort of role that he typically plays, and he does his best to make his character as interesting as possible. The only problem is his character is essentially someone who has a kind of a decent job. I mean, he married his high school sweetheart. She's an attorney. They live in a nice house. So his whole dissatisfaction with his life is understandable, but it's not terribly compelling. The Rock's character, here he plays a character that we don't typically see him play. His life in high school, he was the geek, he was the nerd, and he was the one that was picked on. Now he's this big, buff CIA agent. But what I wasn't expecting, what I really liked about his character is he's still basically that geek. He likes wearing unicorn t-shirts and is socially awkward. That produced quite a bit of laughs. So combined with Kevin Hart being Kevin Hart, who is funny and just standing there, he's funny, and The Rock playing this funny character, does produce laughs. It's just the story around them doesn't give them a whole lot of opportunity to really branch out from there. There's just so many ways they could have taken this premise and these actors and this director and gone somewhere really funny, and they just didn't do that. This is a pretty simple review. Central Intelligence, it's a funny movie. It made me laugh. It just didn't make me laugh a lot. If you like these actors, it's well worth seeing. I just think there was a better movie with these parts that could have been made. So if you've seen Central Intelligence, let me know what you thought down in the comments. And also, what are some good spy comedies? I mentioned Spy, that might be my favorite. But let me know what yours are. As always, you can subscribe to my channel, check out some of my other reviews, and until next time, I'll see you at the movies.